Hello and welcome into the Ultimate Hockey Hub in this edition of The Breakaway here on Portable TV. My name is Ben Holden, coming to you from our Portable TV studio here in downtown Washington, D.C. Today, a very special guest in store, a man who has coached all over the globe. He's currently an assistant coach with Akbars, a playoff team in the KHL's Eastern Conference. They'll take part in the upcoming 2022 Gagarin Cup playoffs, slated to start on March 1st, shortly after the Winter Olympics are done in Beijing. I'll be joined momentarily as well by our Portable TV KHL insider, Gillian Kemmerer from St. Petersburg, Russia. She has covered and talked with today's guest on numerous occasions, and that guest is Mike Pelino, a true hockey lifer. He's a native of Welland, Ontario, directly south of St. Catharines, Ontario, near the shores of Lake Ontario, also not far from Niagara Falls and not far from Buffalo, New York. He grew up loving and playing the game of hockey as most Canadians do. He played for several teams in his playing days. In fact, in his younger years, one of his coaches was the legendary Mike Keenan, who would later in his career earn the nickname of Iron Mike. At one point of his life, he was a high school teacher and a hockey coach at the same time. A fascinating part of Mike's coaching and life path, which we will dive into. I mentioned all over the globe, in Canada, the NHL, the KHL. He's won a Gagarin Cup in his time in the KHL. He's coached in the Canadian University ranks, the AHL, the OHL, the Western Hockey League, and he's worked alongside well over 100 coaches in his career. He's been part of Canadian national teams and a gold medal winner as Canada beat the U.S. in Salt Lake in 2002 for the gold. The resume and life work of Mike Pelino is impressive, and I am now happy to be joined by Mike and our KHL insider, who joins us from St. Petersburg, Gillian Kemmerer. Good morning to both of you, and I got to start with this for Gillian and Mike too. Maybe you're on the same page on this one. When did you guys first meet? Because you have a long history. Who recalls the story, when and where?
I recall the story. I don't know. Mike, do you?
I do too, I think, Gillian.
All right, what is it?
Who's going to take a stab at it, Ben? Okay. Mike and I first connected in person, I believe it was right here in St. Petersburg at the Radisson Royale. Right. I was on a press trip with the KHL, and what I remember so vividly, I interviewed him. He was so generous, as Ben, you're about to learn, with his expertise. And the one question that I asked him that really stuck out to me was that I had observed over the course of his time in the K that he was probably the only import coach to ever stand on a bench and sing the Russian national anthem from start to finish. And I was so impressed by that. And so I asked him why he did it, and he gave a really great response. So Mike, maybe you can share with Ben a little bit about that, because it's still one of my absolute most favorite things about you that I learned over our many interviews together now.
Well, thank you, Gillian. That's pretty touching. But yeah, for whatever reason, I started singing the national anthem right from the start here. It was up on the clock so I could read it, but in no time at all, I got to know the words pretty familiarly. And the big reason I ended up doing it was out of respect to Russia, respect to my home country, Canada, and also because my dad is such a great singer and loves to sing, and he's 90 years old, and he still sings to me every night when I phone him, and just gave me a chance during the few moments before puck drop that I was able to reflect on my blessings and my family and think about the people back home. So it was a natural tie-in, and something that I enjoyed doing.
Very cool, very cool. A lot of respect for that, Mike. That's awesome. I know Gillian wants to dive in. We're on day one as we tape this of the Olympic Games, but I have to ask, honest question with a little side of humor to it. Is there a league you haven't coached in?
Well, that's a great question. I've touched a lot of them, and they've all been great, and hopefully this one's the last one that I go to, but you never know.
All right, Gillian?
He said that so many times about coming back to the KHL, and here he is contending for another Gagarin Cup. So I don't know about that, Mike. I feel like there could be the Uzbek League or something in your future. I don't know. But I want to start with the game today. You and I were texting a little bit earlier. Obviously, ROC opened the men's hockey tournament against Switzerland. Tight, gritty match. I mean, it was an own goal that decided this. So a 1-0 scoreline, and we had one of the most prolific set of forwards on the ice for Russia. I'm just curious, what are your takeaways from the game, and sort of how are you looking at their chances moving forward?
Well, two things. I think number one is there's not a team in the tournament that can't come out and win a game or win the cup or win the gold medal itself. But naturally, there's some who are going to be more favored. In saying that, I think it takes time for a team to gel, to get the confidence built. I know from even being back in 2002, we knew we were going to get better each day, and I think every team approaches it like that. And Russia fought through and found a way to win today, and good for them, and good for the Swiss for the game they played as well. So I think we're going to see 18 games like that in the round robin here.
I agree with you. If you had to pick a favorite at this point, I know it's so early, would you go with Russia? Is there a team that you think is going to surprise us?
I think, to me, Russia is the favorite, and deservedly so. They're the defending champions of this tournament. They've got an unbelievable lineup. They've got a great passion for winning. But my own country, Canada, always finds a way to be there. And, the United States has an impressive roster. You go right through every team, and there's no one that you can really say is out of it or into it. And, even China, for being the first time in the Olympics, they might have a chance to surprise some people. And I'm not saying they're going to get to the medals, but you never know.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Gillian and I have done a bunch of previews, Mike, and to me, Russia is the favorite. I think Sweden's number 2 and Finland in that order. And I think Sweden, because of the goaltending, Finland, the experience they have and the players they have. You've got a few guys on that Akbar's team that you're on the staff with. It's a big opportunity for some of those guys. Can you talk about the guys that come front and center that are from your team playing in the Olympics for Team Russia?
Yes, we're very proud that there's 6 of our players representing Akbar's in the Olympics. We've got Steven Campher, who's with Team USA, and I think he's going to really have a great Olympics. He's an outstanding player. I think he's going to have an opportunity to be a leader with the United States team, and he's been playing great over here. So I think he's going to slide right into that as they get started in Beijing. From the Canadian team, we've got 3 players. We've got Jordan Wheel. We've got Mark Barbario, and we've got Jason Demers.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a great experience for them. I think it's their first time representing Canada internationally at this level anyway. And it's going to be interesting to see the experience they get from this and hopefully help us once they get back in our quest for the Gagarin Cup. And then we've got 2 young players on the Russian team, Dimitri Varankov, who is just so much great potential and such a solid player. He's had some injuries this season, but they tell me that last year he was one of the best players in Russia, and I'm really excited to get a chance to watch him with Team ROC. And then our goaltender, Timur Gilyayev, he's playing with the Russians, and Fedotov looked pretty good today, but I'll tell you, if Timur gets a chance, he's going to show the world what a great goaltender he is.
Gillian?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of your youngsters. Obviously, we have Varankov represented on this roster, but you also have Galimov as well, who are both high-profile NHL prospects. Can you talk a little bit about Kazan's dedication to growing players? Because one thing that struck me when I arrived in the city for the first time, which was just this past summer, was that they really have a mandate to play and to develop young talent. And as we both know, that's not a universal across Russia.
No, you're right about that. Excuse me. I've only been here, a little over a month and a half, and so, but already I'm so impressed with the entire Akbar's organization, from the youth group right up. We've got a terrific baza here where there's players on the ice 24 hours a day, it seems, and they do really spend a lot of time with their development and the care to it. And they've had a lot of great players come through here over the years, and I can see that continuing to happen.
And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got a guy that's been in the league forever. It's actually quite a nice reunion for the two of you from your Metallurg Magnitogorsk days. That's Denis Zaripov, quickly turning 41, I believe, in March, has announced that this is the end of his career, which for me was so difficult to take, especially because we just lost another one of your legends, Sergei Mozyakin. Can you talk a little bit about that sort of first reunion, first meeting with him since your Metallurg days?
Well, both those guys are very special to me from my 5 years together with them in Magnitogorsk. And then to have a chance to get reunited with Z here in Akbars is really nice. I mean, he's a legend. He's a legend as a hockey player. He's a legend as a leader. He's a great person. And sure, he's announcing his retirement, but I guess so did Tom Brady, and you never know what's going to happen there. But Z's outstanding. He's there might not be a more gifted scorer and that includes guys in the NHL. And I mean, guys like Sergei Mozyakin, he's a talented scorer, but Z is so gifted in terms of being able to score from anywhere and score so many different ways. And it's really nice to be back with him here. And I'm really hoping that we can help him get his sixth Gagarin Cup, and he can help us and our staff and our players all enjoy the thrill of raising it this year.
Mike, I'm going to stick with the theme with Akbars. I mean, Gillian's kind of filled me in on what happened, and I want you to certainly feel free to share that. But how did you end up now in this position as an assistant with this team? How did it all work out for you?
Well, actually, this is my 9th year in the KHL, and I started with 5 years in Magnitogorsk, and then I jumped to Omsk Avangard, and then to Yaroslavl, and last year I wasn't going to return, and then partway through the season, Magnitogorsk called and asked if I'd consider coming back for the last half, so I did, and it was great to be doing that again, and then this year, Magnitogorsk had talked to me about coming back, but I just couldn't make it work in terms of I had some priorities where I wanted to stay at home and stay in Canada. And as things turned out, life was pretty good in Canada, and I was able to, with the full support of my family, when Dimitri Varankov called me and offered me the opportunity to come and work with him and his staff and with Akbars, it was something that I definitely wanted to pursue, and they made it happen, and I made it happen, and I'm thrilled to be here in Akbars.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on it about the organization a little bit, the city, the things, all the programs, the teams, and all that. There's obviously a serious commitment to winning there because of the players that they signed. Campher would be the #1 guy, but then Demers and Barbario have come in. Eric Fair signed with you guys. You guys have loaded up for Bear here to make a push for the Cup, clearly.
Yes, we sure have, and we've got now that we've got a terrific group of imports, we can complement that with the great Russians we have, because we've got some pretty impressive hockey players here. And you're right, Akbars is the winningest team in the KHL as far as having 3 Gagarin Cups in the 12-14 years. I guess it's 12 years that the championship's been contested, and they want to win again, and so do I. And we've got a lot of confidence brewing in this arena.
Good stuff. Gillian?
Well, speaking of the playoff picture, I would love to just get your general thoughts. I mean, we have had such an atypical season. I mean, I feel like I say that now every season since COVID started to impact hockey schedules, but we've made this decision now at the league level to suspend the regular season. It impacted the cusp teams the most, arguably, but of all the teams that were in contention for a playoff spot and got one, I think for you and Avangard, it had one of the most incredible impacts. So I was wondering if you could just give your overall thoughts on the league decision, and then, you know, what your reaction was when you found out we were having a rematch of the Eastern Conference Finals.
Well, I guess over the years, we've learned to really understand how important it is to roll with the punches, and whatever you're dealt with, you have to deal with and make the most of. But we were prepared to play Novosibirsk. That's the way we thought the league should have ended, with us in 3rd place and them in 6th, once the KHL determined that there weren't going to be any more league games played. But then when they just let us know earlier this week, basically, that they took a game away from UFA in their loss column, and that pushed UFA ahead of us in percentage points. So all of a sudden now we're 4th place, and we have to play Avangard, and it should be a great series. They're the defending champions. They're well coached. They've got some outstanding players as well, and we're looking forward to the challenge.
Well, speaking of being well coached, you spent some time under Bob Hartley at Avangard. So what intel about Bob and the way he plays do you bring to Kazan as you prepare to face them?
Well, Bob's had an impressive career. He's won everywhere he's been.
Yeah.
He's been very successful in Avangard. I enjoyed my year there with him and Jacques and Dima and the entire staff. And Bob's very passionate. Bob's very much attention to detail. He's a good motivator. He's an intelligent hockey man, and he knows what it takes to win. So he's going to have Avangard playing as good as they can play. And I know they haven't had as, let's say, a successful a year as a lot of people thought they should. But I know come playoff time, they're going to be a real, as you put it, bear for us.
Mike, I said to Gillian last week when we talked about the news, or maybe it was earlier this week, the days were running together, but nevertheless, when we talked about the decision and what the league's going to do, I said, can we do a best of 9 between you guys? I mean, like, 7's not enough, man. I mean, we both love your team. So I want to take you back a little ways here. Varsity Blues, you were cut. It was suggested that you go try out for the Oshawa Legionnaires, a Metro Junior B League team, and you met there one of the most influential guys in your entire career, as it turned out, Mike Keenan, who was your head coach. What do you recall from that stage of your life?
Well, I was a young 18-year-old, and by young, that was my first time out of Welland, basically, and I was at the University of Toronto.
Okay.
And Tom Watt, who was the coach, suggested I go play for Mike. Mike was a former coach or player of Tom's, and Tom suggested that Mike might help me in my pursuit to make the team the following year. So it worked out pretty well. Oshawa is about 45 minutes outside of Toronto. Mike was a school teacher at the time in downtown Toronto. So we were able, there were actually 3 of us who did it. We were able to commute with Mike to the practices and the games and then take the train home, all the while trying to maintain our studies. But right from the moment I met Mike, you could see what an outstanding hockey person he was, and even more so a better individual. And I know he gets a lot of bad ink over the years, but I can't say enough about him and the impact he's had on me in my life, and continued to do so over the years, and the influence he's been. But he was head and shoulders above any coach I've ever been a part of up to that point, and it was just an enlightening experience for me. And I remember staying at his home with him and his wife Rita, just because we couldn't get back to Toronto as easily, and he did that for the other 2 guys. And one of them is Dave Henderson, and just a bit of a shout out there. Dave is Brooke Henderson's father.
Oh.
And Brooke's Canada's outstanding golfer and LPGA pro. And anyhow, it was just an outstanding year, other than my studies. But it did pave the way for helping me make the University of Toronto hockey team. And I had 5 outstanding years there, and my 5th year, and maybe you were going to get back to this, but lo and behold, Mike Keenan becomes my coach once again and helps take us to a Canadian championship.
That's awesome. I'm a huge golf guy, so I'm well aware who Brooke Henderson is. She's a fantastic young Canadian player. That's awesome. So you talked about that, and that's great. You knew right where I was going. Later, you get hired as an assistant while you're a high school teacher. I've got to hear, you were sleeping in your car. You were sleeping at Maple Leaf Gardens. I mean, there's worse places to sleep in the world. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the guy you talked about earlier when Jillian asked you about Hartley, who was on with me last week. And he was a factory worker, as you know. What's that stage like? What are the highlights from that, man? I got to hear about those days where you're sleeping all over the place to coach and teach.
Well, another guy who was a real influence on me was Paul Dennis, and he was one of our assistant coaches at the University of Toronto before I ended up playing for Mike. And Paul was someone who I wanted to follow as a teacher. So I became a high school teacher, and Paul at the time became the head coach of the Toronto Marlies of the OHL. And Paul asked me if I'd be his assistant. And he knew that I was a school teacher and it might be difficult, but we made it work. And we played 80 games that year. I never missed a game, and I never missed a day of school. And it was a tremendous experience, but some of the things I had to do, like you say, we would get home from a road trip at 3 or 4 in the morning, and it was probably easier just to drive to the school and pass out in my car for a couple hours before the morning bell went, or to just get some shut-eye in our dressing room at Maple Leaf Gardens. So nice memories to reflect on, that's for sure.
Right on Carlton and Church Street in downtown Toronto. Jillian?
I mean, from sleeping in your car to being on the coaching staff for the Canadian gold medal win at the Olympics in 2002. I mean, what a trajectory, what a testament to hard work. And Ben, before we talk about just the overall experience in 2002, I learned something very interesting, but also super sad today. You texted me earlier and asked, does Mike have his gold medal with him? Can he show it to us? So I texted Mike and I found out while we were speaking that Mike does have the gold medal and he has a Gagarin Cup ring at home, but all of his other championship rings have been stolen.
No.
So Mike, tell us the backstory on that. That floored me when you said it.
Well, it is a sad story. The rings were nice mementos, but the memories are better. And what happened was I did have a nice collection of about 10 rings, and I had them on this, I don't even know how to describe it, but like a magic wand. And they were all in there. And my dad, as I mentioned, who likes to sing, he would go around Welland and he would sing at the senior homes and at the hospitals, and then he'd go into the schools. And he always wanted to take my rings with him to show the kids and the people in the hospitals. And that was great. And we were proud to be able to show off these rings. There was a Canada Cup ring, 2 World Championship rings from Canada's men's team, a World Junior ring, the Gagarin Cup, the first one we won in 13-14. And anyway, it was a nice collection of rings. And I guess someone caught sight of the fact that my dad just put it in his trunk, trusting everyone. And later on that night, he got the car broken into and the rings were stolen. And I've got some nice pictures of them, and I still have my second Gagarin Cup ring. So, but like I said earlier, it's more the memories and the emotions that they have as opposed to the actual physical beings of them.
That's an unbelievable story to me. And to everyone watching, if you see somebody wearing a Canada Cup ring at Tim Hortons that should not be, can you please give us a call? Because that is just unreal. Wow. But speaking of the memories of that tournament, I would love to hear a bit about what stands out for you. I cannot imagine the emotions and the feeling just of being there, let alone to make it to the top of the podium. What sticks out when you think of that time?
Well, it's everything that everyone who's part of the Olympics does say. It's special to represent the country. It's so special to be a part of something as ultimate as being in the Olympic Games. And it was all of that for me and for us. And it was great to be with the other athletes. It was great to be in the Olympic Village, the other coaches, and then for it to be, which is the flagship for Canada when it comes to athletics. And Canada hadn't won a gold medal in 50 years. Wow. And here we were being led by Wayne Gretzky as our general manager and the whole Hockey Canada staff, and Mario Lemieux as our captain. And it was just an unbelievable 10, 12-day journey of actually being in Salt Lake City, but a journey of over a couple of years in terms of our preparation and all of that. And when we got there, and I can sympathize, if you want to use that word, what the athletes in Beijing are going through, especially the hockey players. They know that they're a team that's just come together recently. It's not a team that's been groomed as let's say the women hockey teams have been. And these guys know that every day is going to be a challenge. And like we said to our guys back in 2002, you know what? We're going to get to the playoff round. We know we're going to get better every day. And come February 24th, the world is going to see the best hockey team that's ever been put on ice. And we believe that, and we did get better. It was a lot of growing pains. We lost our first game to Sweden. We barely beat an underrated German team. We had to score a late goal to tie the Czechs. And then we got lambasted in the Canadian media to a certain extent, and Wayne had to come to our defense. But our leadership group was great. Our players were great. And, the right things happened for us, and that we got to play Finland and Belarus and then the Americans. And it was everything it was typed up to be, an unbelievable gold medal game. And I'm really grateful that we were on the winning end of it. And and without sounding cocky, we fully expected to be, and it was the best team that the world had seen to that point in time.
So here's my first Michigan drop. Steve Yzerman was on that team, of course. Great Red Wing. There you go. We'll get that out of the way. All kidding aside, though, Mike, I want to circle back on two things with you in regard to, first, what Gillian asked you about. And one of the men is we talked offline that I wanted to ask you about is Pat Quinn. Anyone that knows hockey knows the influence Pat Quinn had on the game, players, coaches, just people in general. I had a chance to interview him once about 10, 11 years ago when I was in the American League. He was working with Edmonton at the time. And you would have thought I knew him for 25 years. Unbelievable. What does he mean to you? What did he mean to you as a coach? What's he mean to you now that he's passed away?
Well, he's meant so much to me. I always admired him from afar, just the way you're describing. And when I first got to work with him, it was like I was his son. He was great with me. We had a real nice bond and a real special relationship. I remember sitting out quite regularly, nightly almost, in the Olympic Village, having a cigar with Pat. And
oh, man.
just soaking it all in with the athletes going by. And it was just a real special time to be with him. And just to see the way he treated people, the way he handled adversity, the way he dealt with stress. It was just terrific in every sense of the word.
Awesome stuff. So the other thing I wanted to circle back with on you is you mentioned Paul Dennis, and reading some things last night, I believe that it was, the word you used was, that was your first real taste of coaching. So my question is, what did you like so much about the taste of coaching and being on a bench and coaching hockey?
I think what I liked the most was the interaction with the players. I think it comes a little bit from my teaching background. When you have a chance to influence someone, that might be the highest honor you can have. And here you are now with a team full of hockey players and fellow colleagues that you work with, and just being able to discuss with them and help them get better and help them reach their potential is as satisfying a feeling as you can find. And to do it in an arena or to do it in a dressing room and a hockey team is beyond special for me, because, as you said, I grew up loving the sport and loving the game and loving the involvement with it, and it just allowed me to continue on in that same field.
Gillian?
We've talked a lot about, your time as an assistant coach, and I have one last question related to that, but then I want to talk about your stint as a head coach in the KHL. But you shared with me a really interesting comment from Iron Mike when you came over to Magnitogorsk for the first time, which was really uncharted territory for a lot of North American coaches. It was guys like you and Dave King and Iron Mike that really started that trend. And you said that Mike said to you, we should seek to understand rather than to be understood. And I thought that was really prolific. And I would love to hear a bit more about how in daily practice that played out for you. And do you think it's the reason you were able to win a Gagarin Cup in that very first season?
I think it's definitely one of the reasons. I mean, Mike came over with the reputation he had, and it would have been easy for someone in his position to rule with an iron fist and to demand of his players what he thought they needed to do. But when he shared that insight with me that we need to understand these guys, they're different to what we grew up with, and we want to get to learn more about them instead of tell them who we're all about and what we're all about. And it became a really symbiotic relationship where the synergy of us with the players became incredible. And as we built through the year, as the trust developed for the players with Mike, and that he really was a good person and a good man as well as a good coach, and vice versa, when some of the things we brought in that may have been foreign to these players, days off, shorter practices, a lesser of a, let's say, forced mentality when it comes to work. It just made us stronger and stronger, and did definitely help paved the way for us winning the Gagarin Cup. And it took us 7 games to beat Lev Prague, a very good team, and even some of our conquests along the way. Now it helps to have had Mosiakin and Kozechkin and Kovash and Zarapov and Chris Lee, and we did have a pretty impressive roster. But in saying that, there's been other impressive rosters that haven't won, and Mike sure was the glue that helped bring that together.
Now, you stepped into a head coaching role after Craig McTavish's departure at Lokomotiv Yaroslavl. It was an early season coaching firing, which we're used to now, I think, in the KHL. But you stepped into that role, I would argue, pretty seamlessly. And I'm wondering if anything about having that position surprised you after all the years you had spent in a support role.
It only surprised me that that Lokomotiv was willing to take a chance on somebody who had only been an assistant in the KHL, and on top of that was an import coach. I never ever for a second doubted my abilities to be an effective head coach, and I'm proud of the job I did in Lokomotiv, but I'm also pleased with the fact that they gave me that opportunity. And we had a great group of players that things fell into place nicely, and we ended up having a very good season that was unfortunately curtailed with the pandemic. And but it was a great experience to be the head coach, and I'm thrilled to have had the opportunity to coach in that position in the KHL.
Mike, I'm curious.
Is it a role? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Jillian. Go ahead.
I was just going to quickly ask if it was a role you might reprise again. Is it something that's on your radar?
You know, I got to be honest, it's not. It's I think my whole life I haven't been someone to look ahead and try to see what the next step is, or I really and whether it's being grounded by my folks or my upbringing, but I'm really happy with one day at a time and not really worrying about what might be in store down the road. And right now, my only objective is to help our team here win the Gagarin Cup and work closely together with our coaching staff to make that happen.
We know each other well, or we've gotten to know each other well, Mike. That's exactly what I was going to kind of follow up with, but I'll throw this one your way. As you know, I've talked to a lot of guys, Campher being one of them, guys around the league that I've known from all my years in college hockey here in the U.S. When you first came over, getting used to how the management on the bench with the language differences, how was that? And I mean, I'm sure it's better now. It's obviously, you probably know some Russian, but what's the communication like on the bench, man, when you're coaching? When you're a Canadian, you speak English, you got Russians, you got all kinds of different languages being spoken. How is that on the bench for you and your staff?
It's obviously a bit of a challenge, but over the years, I've been fortunate to have had English-speaking assistant coach with me, Ilya Vorobiev, who I worked with together for 5 years in Magnitogorsk, is just an outstanding friend of mine and terrific coach. And anytime I needed to have something translated to the player, he was more than able to help me. Guys understand when you're coming from the heart and they know you're trying to help them. They listen a little more intently, and maybe between meshing the words of English and Russian together, they get your point. And so it really doesn't become as unsurmountable as it might be to the average person right now.
A little bit of hand signals going on, things like, play hard, things like that, I presume, too, right? Probably.
Well, that's the universal language, isn't it?
Right, exactly. So I'm sure you could go a million directions with this, but the revolution, the evolution of coaching, going back to when you started, you did video, obviously, as Jillian talked about, with the O2 team, and we're an assistant on that team, done a lot of video, and I'm sure that's a big part of what you do now. What are the other changes that you've noticed in all the years you've been in the game coaching in terms of managing and things like that from your perspective as an assistant coach?
That's a great question. I think the one other thing that's happened is that the maturity of the players, the way the game has changed to one of such speed now. I think things happen so much quicker. And to be able to use the resources that we have, like video, like the analytics, right on the bench when we're able to show something for immediate feedback, I think that all benefits. And now it's there's so many good hockey players out there that any little edge will help them, and they're keen on listening. And that's something that I think went a little bit away a few years back in the earlier part of my career, where I don't want to say the players were just looking out for themselves, but there seemed to be a stretch where it was more important what was going to benefit them than what was going to benefit the team. And I think that's changed back now to understanding that your team is what's most important, and you're a piece of it, and you just want to do everything you can to help them, and then let the sidebars or the byproducts of that success lead to individual opportunities.
That actually, it prompts a question from me about not just the evolution of coaching and the tools you have and the players, but you've coached overseas for so long. And I know we've spoken about this previously. There are a lot of differences in the coachability and the behavior of players, which makes coaching an international bench really interesting. We've discussed how sometimes maybe the Russians are more obedient, whereas the North Americans might be a bit more outspoken, willing to criticize. Are you finding that there's a convergence now with the way that players behave or respond to coaching, or do you still find really distinct, interesting cultural differences between players that you work with in the KHL?
I think I find the cultural differences more in the younger and up-and-coming players. I think once there's a little bit of an establishment there with the players and where they're at and comfortable in their careers, then they seem to fall back into that more of a respect factor for the coach and the upper management and so forth. Whereas maybe it's just like when you're a teenager and you think you know everything, and that's what I sensed with some of the younger players, primarily in North America. There seemed to be more of an entitlement, more of a, I want to do what's best for me. And then as things progress, hopefully they learn the right way to do it. And, through the influence of guys like Steve Yzerman, I learned firsthand when I saw him with some of his interactions with junior players I had in Peterborough, how what an impact he had on them in terms of getting them to appreciate the importance of development. You haven't made it just because you're a superstar player in the OHL. You're just a stepping stone to getting to where you want to get to, and it's going to continue to take a lot of hard work. And I think that the majority of the players end up realizing that at some point. It's just that when you can realize it a little earlier in your career, you're going to definitely benefit more of it as you grow.
Now, you don't just coach teams of players, Mike. From what I understand, you also have quite a team of animals at home. Ben, I don't know if I mentioned this to you.
You did.
So I just wanted to do a quick check on how everybody's doing, the chickens. Like, how is the Pelino farm holding up in your absence?
It's great. I get pictures every day. I get pictures of one of our favorite chickens hanging in the house with my wife and my mother-in-law, and it's just really neat when you see it all, and the pictures of the dogs. And then we're really excited to see how our bees are going to hold up over the winter, because it's been a pretty cold winter in Millbrook, where I'm from. But they wintered well last year and gave us a ton of honey that we were able to share with our friends. And so things are good, as Mike Keenan says, back on the farm.
So where does all that? What's the town you said you call home? Millington?
No, now I live in Millbrook.
Millbrook.
That's a little town just outside of Peterborough, and between Oshawa and Peterborough, it's about 2.5 hours from where I grew up. But it's the hometown of my wife, and we're back actually on her old homestead, and it's just a beautiful piece of the world.
So that's where all that comes from. When growing up, was your family farmers, animals? What do they do?
No. My dad was he was an athlete, and then he was a police officer in Welland. He came over from Italy when he was 5 years old, and he's lived in Welland his whole life. And then he just became a real good philanthropist in Welland, and he owned a body shop. And so I had a lot of different experiences in my upbringing with that. And no, we never had animals. We had a little dog, but it wasn't until that we settled into Millbrook that, and we don't live on a farm. It's just a nice piece of property, but we've slowly added to it with the dogs and cats and chickens and bees. And my mother-in-law had a bunny until it just recently passed away. So who knows what's going to be waiting for me when I come home.
Right. I got to ask you about your wife, Kim. How long have you guys been together?
We were married in 1989, so it'll be 33 years this May.
I mean, Mike, the tags on the suitcases for you guys has got to be pretty deep. I mean, I'm sure you'd love to talk about what your wife means to you. Obviously, we know you're married to her, but in the sense of all the moving and all the change, I mean, it goes hand in hand when you're doing something like you've done all the years. What do you want to say about your wife and her commitment to your career?
Well, unbelievable in one word. And she's been so supportive of anything, even going back again to Russia this past year, because it was pretty idyllic at home with us both being there and living the so-called good life. But she was 100% behind this because she knows my passion is coach. What a special opportunity it would have been to have another chance at the Gagarin Cup, and she's been like that from the day I met her. And I can't be more thankful or appreciative for the good Lord giving me someone like that. And thank you for bringing her up, Ben.
You're welcome. You can't do it alone, right? I mean, that's pretty. I mean, I guess you could, but I mean, that's pretty impressive. The sacrifice she's made. Gillian?
I mean, I also have to give it up to Kim when I'm wondering how Mike is doing, where he is in the world. She is always documenting. She's always posting. So I'm like, oh, I can see that Mike's doing well because Kim's posting. She's got the latest. So she is the ultimate news source on social media for where Mike is in the world. And I love that. I have to ask because you told me this a while back and I just love the idea of it, of you and Iron Mike hitting the karaoke clubs in Magnitogorsk and just lighting them up. So what would you say is the latest addition to your karaoke repertoire? What could we expect if we found you in like some basement karaoke bar in Magny?
Well, we've got a handful of our favorite songs. First of all, New York's been special to both Mike and I, so we love New York, New York, and we love Frank Sinatra, so My Way's one of our favorite songs. We've acquired a few European singers to help get us through some good sing songs in terms of we like Stumbling In by Smokey or Chris Norman. We like Chris Rea and Fool If You Think It's Over. And then through our involvement with Ilya, who's an outstanding singer as well, we've got Gregory Leps and some Russian songs through Runkia Vodka. And so you can get just about anything from us if you happen to come into the right karaoke bar, Gillian.
It's the next special on portable TV. And by the way, My Way seems like a good anthem for a coach. It seems like the right move.
It is.
So if I could real quick, so I'm going to stick with the music theme, Mike. I will just tell you this. I'm a huge fan of this band. They're probably my favorite band of all time. When I say Lakeside Park, does that register with you at all?
I'm afraid it doesn't.
No. All right. So the band Rush.
I'll look them up, that's for sure.
Neil Peart, St. Catharines, that's where he lived before he died a couple of years ago. I was curious if you were a fan of the band, but it doesn't sound like you are.
Well, I recognize Neil Peart's name, that's for sure, but no, I'm not that much into the music bands. I just like the old time stuff that my dad used to sing to me.
I got you, no worries. Gillian, go ahead.
I think my sort of last thought to you is, you know, as we're watching these Olympics, as we go into the Gagarin Cup playoffs, you have coached so many incredible games, tournaments, nights, teams. Is there one night that stands out of all of them, even if it's not the most spectacular victory and you've had many, but is there any one that you just look back and you think that was the best night of my coaching career so far?
That's such a good question because there's been, as you say, so many, excuse me, special moments. But three that jump out is we won the Spengler Cup in 2002, and that was so rewarding because we had lost the year before in the finals, and now to bounce back and win it the next year on behalf of Team Canada and the players that that represented our country there. The first Gagarin Cup win and the second Gagarin Cup win were both extremely special because they both happened in Game 7s. One was at home and one was on the road. And in both situations, we beat two great teams. But it was that time when you feel, gee, you know, this is what it's all. And but I could probably continue on with about another 25 big moments like that. And you know, from my time at Brock University to even my first game with the Toronto Marlies to my first game with the New York Rangers, and in Spokane, Washington, where I worked with Mike Babcock, we hosted the Memorial Cup. We didn't win it, but you're right. When I start to think back, there's some outstanding moments that jump out for me, Gillian and Ben.
Now,
Go ahead, Gillian.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
I know that I don't think you'll get the opportunity to face them just yet, but you are now coaching a team that's on one side of a very famous KHL rivalry, which is crowned in Chok, Akbars Kazan versus Salavat Chilayev Ufa. That trophy, that dessert, I find is quite controversial. I've interviewed a lot of players on both sides of the rivalry. A lot of the imports don't like it. So I'm just curious, have you tried the local Chok dessert in Kazan yet? And do we have a yay or nay just yet? Or do we have to wait until you face Ufa to find out?
Well, I definitely have tried it, and we definitely have a yay, although I haven't had it since I got here in December. So I'll have to look forward to having it sometime over the next couple months.
So I have two.
Yes or no? Do we like it? Don't we?
Oh, yeah, definitely like it.
Okay.
Right on. So I have two left for you, Mike. Following off Jillian's question about coaches and games and moments and things like that, I'm sure this is very difficult too, but are there two or three guys that, you know, you coached them when they were young that made it? Any names you can throw out there to share with our audience?
Oh, boy. You know, I didn't coach that many when they were young to go on to make it. I coached more than when they sort of already gotten to where they wanted to be. But the ones that stand out for me, Joe Thornton, who I had the opportunity to coach with Canada's under-18 team and national junior team. I really enjoyed my time with him. Eric Lindros, who I worked with over the years at the hockey schools and then in the Olympics. He's pretty special to me. And a few of my Magnitogorsk players from the years, Oscar Ossola, Chris Lee, Jan Kovac, probably definitely Mosiakin and Zarapov and Vasily Kosachkin. And, you know, I think they were all well-established stars on their way before I got to be a part of them. But I'd like to think maybe I helped them out a little bit over the time I spent with them too.
That's awesome. And then lastly for me, you've coached with Andy Murray, correct?
Yes.
All right. So here's what I'll throw at you to close this out. So I got to know Andy really well when he was at Western Michigan. Of course, he just stepped down last year. I love the guy. I absolutely love him. He is business, takes care of it, great man. He told me the first time I interviewed him, he said, this was on my bucket list to coach. You've coached Canadian university hockey like Andy did, to coach college hockey in the U.S. So my question is there anything else, whether it's coaching related or life related, that's on your bucket list?
Well, I'd say if I got an opportunity to coach 1 year in an NCAA school, that would be pretty special for me.
Wow.
I really am impressed with college students or university students, having been one myself and experienced it, and then having coached at the university level for 10 years at Brock University and also at the University of Toronto for a year. I think they're pretty special athletes, and they're sort of at the springboard of their careers, and some at the pinnacles. So it's a bit of both, and so that would be pretty high up there. I've had the opportunity to coach with Canada's women's national team, and that's always something that still really appeals to me, to have that opportunity. I love the women's game, and but my bucket list right now is probably winning the Gagarin Cup for Akbars, and or with Akbars, and then seeing what might happen after that, if anything.
Fair enough. This was great, guys. Go ahead.
Maybe playing Pebble Beach or Fisher's Island. I love Fisher's Island.
I like the way you think, Mike. This was awesome. Thank you both for your time, Mike. I look forward to communicating with you down the road. Thank you so much. It was great getting to know you and hearing so many great stories you have. Thank you to both of you. I appreciate it.